I'd made peace with an ugly driveway. Years of dark streaks and gray blotches that I figured were just permanent, the way old concrete is supposed to look. Then I watched a neighbor clear a stain off his slab in the time it took me to drink a cup of coffee. No pressure washer, no rented equipment, no full weekend of scrubbing. 10 minutes and a cheap bag of powder, and the concrete under that stain looked freshly poured. When I asked what it was, he lowered his voice like he was sharing something he wasn't supposed to. Here's what he knew that I didn't. The reason a stain shrugs off everything you throw at it is that it isn't sitting on your concrete. It's living inside it. Concrete looks like solid stone, but structurally, it's closer to a hard sponge laced with microscopic pores. Every oil drip, every wash of pollen, every patch of mildew soaks down into those channels and settles below the surface. That's why scrubbing the top does almost nothing. You're wiping the lid while the mess sits inside the jar, and no amount of elbow grease reaches down where the stain actually lives. And once you understand that, you start to see it everywhere. It's all the same story. It isn't grime you failed to scrub off. It's grime that soaked in years ago and set up residence. You can push on the outside of a sponge all day, but if you want what's trapped in the middle, you have to reach inside it. That single shift from scrubbing the surface to reaching into the material is the entire secret. That's exactly why a cheap powder outperforms machines that cost hundreds. The secret is a compound called sodium percarbonate, which you probably already own a version of. It's the oxygen bleach powder in the laundry aisle of any grocery store. When it meets warm water, it splits into washing soda and hydrogen peroxide, and that peroxide releases what chemists call active oxygen, a burst of oxygen molecules that dive down into the concrete pores and go after the bonds holding stains in place. This is the part that changes how you see your whole driveway. Active oxygen doesn't scrape grime off the top. It travels into the material, reaches the organic staining buried in those pores, and dissolves the invisible glue keeping it stuck. Mildew, algae, leaf tannins, food residue, the general gray film of years. Once that bond breaks, the discoloration lifts up and out of the concrete instead of just getting pushed around on the surface. You're not covering the stain, you're pulling the dirt back out of the sponge, which is something surface scrubbing could never do. This works on organic staining, and that covers the vast majority of what's making your concrete look old. Mildew, algae, moss, leaf, and mulch stains, food and drink spills, that overall weathered gray film. All of it is organic, and all of it is exactly what active oxygen was built to break down. But there are a couple of stains it won't touch, and I'd rather you hear that from me than feel let down later. Now here's why I call it forbidden. That same sodium percarbonate gets bottled as premium oxygenated concrete cleaner at hardware stores for $25, and the identical powder sits in the laundry aisle for a few bucks. Same molecule, same active oxygen, same result on the slab. The only difference is the label and an enormous markup counting on you never connecting the two. Your driveway has no opinion about packaging. It only responds to chemistry. Now, before we continue, if you're tired of wasting money on driveway cleaners that don't work, I wrote a 44-page guide called The Concrete Rescue Playbook. It covers stain removal, concrete restoration, and simple ways to clean old driveways without causing damage. And it's discounted by 80% this month, so you can get it for just $17.99 through the link below. All right, let's keep going. So why does this work in about 10 minutes when a pressure washer can run for hours and lose? The answer is in the science, and understanding it also explains why so many people try oxygen powder and walk away unimpressed. The biggest factor is temperature. In cold water, the powder barely wakes up, and most of its cleaning power stays locked inside the granules. Warm water is what sets the oxygen loose quickly and strongly, and that faint cloudiness as it dissolves is the reaction igniting. The vast majority of people who conclude oxygen cleaners are weak we're unknowingly working with cold, half-asleep solution the entire time. The heat is the difference between a mild reaction and a fast, aggressive one that finishes in minutes. Let me put some real numbers on this, because warm water is vague, and vague is what ruins people's results. You don't want lukewarm. You want it hot, the hotter the better, right up to what's coming out of your tap on its highest setting. That's the temperature that cracks the powder open fast. Mix it right where you're going to use it, work in sections you can actually reach, and pour it while it's still steaming. Fresh and hot is the entire game. Treat that hot solution like it has a timer running the moment it's mixed, because it does. The condition of the concrete matters just as much. A bone-dry slab is thirsty and pulls the solution unevenly into parched patches before the oxygen can spread to the buried stains, which is why dry concrete tends to clean up streaky. Damp concrete lets the reaction travel evenly across the surface and sink into every pore at once, which is the difference between a blotchy result and one that looks uniform and genuinely new. Then there's the 10-minute window itself, and this is the part most people misjudge. Active oxygen is not instant, but it's also not slow. Once it's activated in warm water on a damp surface, the reaction reaches peak strength fast, migrating into the pores, finding the stain molecules trapped inside, and breaking the bonds anchoring them in place within roughly 10 minutes. This is the opposite of the pressure washer experience, where progress is loud and immediate. With oxygen, almost nothing appears to be happening on the surface while everything is happening beneath it. The moment the solution dries out, though, the reaction stops, which is why the people who rush or let it dry rarely see what it can really do. This is the exact point where most people sabotage themselves, so promise me you'll do the opposite. When you're standing there and the surface looks unchanged after a few minutes, your instinct will scream that it isn't working. That flat, boring, nothing is happening stretch is precisely when everything is happening. Your only job in that window is to keep the surface wet and leave it completely alone. Patience isn't a suggestion here. Patience is the active ingredient. The people who let it sit and resist the urge to fiddle are the ones who post the jaw-dropping before and afters. Let the chemistry earn its 10 minutes. When the oxygen has finished, the payoff is fast and dramatic. The loosened grime floats up out of the pores, and the water runs brown and gray as years of embedded filth leaves the concrete. That murk is the buried staining exiting the material, and it's why a slab you assumed was permanently discolored can look freshly poured in the span of a coffee break. It was never permanent. The dirt just needed something that could reach it. There's a reason a gentle rinse finishes the job better than brute force, too. Because the stain is already dissolved and floating, ordinary water carries it away completely. High pressure isn't just unnecessary, it's counterproductive. A 3,000 pounds per square inch machine etches and scars concrete, opening even more pores for future stains to settle into, which is exactly why aggressively washed driveways tend to get dirty faster each year. The oxygen did the real work. Water only clears the evidence. But every time you blast concrete with high pressure, you're sanding away the smooth top layer and tearing open thousands of new pores. The oxygen approach does the reverse. It reaches into the existing pores, empties them out, and leaves the surface intact. Gentle isn't the compromise here. Gentle is the upgrade. Let me be fair, because pressure washers and pro services aren't scams. They offer convenience, and for people who don't want to learn any of this, that convenience has real value. The point is simply that the speed and the power come from chemistry, not from an expensive label. A few dollars of oxygen bleach does the exact same thing as the $25 bottle and the $300 service, only faster than either. The math is almost insulting. A pro cleaning runs hundreds. This costs a few dollars and about 10 minutes of mostly waiting, and it reaches the exact staining those costly options quietly charge to hide. Your driveway doesn't care what's on the label. It only cares about the chemistry doing the work. So the stain I called permanent for years was gone before my coffee went cold. Subscribe if you want a part 2, and make sure to check out my ebook in my bio.